Aloha! Today we're going to play with the curves of the spine and different ways that the spine moves. I think you'll need 2 blocks and a strap. And I just want to share with you that I have a little back porchy area that when I moved here was full of all sorts of plants and most of them looked dead. And then a couple days ago I looked at it again and all of a sudden I saw this. I'll show you up close. It just appeared. So I didn't have to go to the store. It just appeared in my backyard, which was really cool. Things in Hawaii come back to life very quickly. And I'm hoping that moving our spine, rejuvenating through movement will help us feel a greater sense of life as well. So I want you to start today by finding something like a wall or a door to stand against. And I'm going to go over here in the corner, and once you're there, back yourself up enough so you feel yourself touching the wall, and most likely that will be probably like the top buttocks area. So allow that to happen, and then bring your shoulder blades against the wall, just to get a sense of, so you're feeling right below your lower back and the area around the shoulder blades, and then notice where your head goes when you do that. Most likely, your head is not going to touch the wall. So I want you to take a moment to play with what you need to do to bring your head to touch the wall. So for most people, I would say there's three main movements. One is to tip your head back, right? Then your head's going to touch the wall. Another one is to very strongly take your chin back and feel what that does to the chest and the back of the neck. And another one is to poke your ribs out. So those are kind of the 3 main ways we tend to do that. And I call those kind of escapes when we're trying to put our body in a position that we think it's supposed to be in. For example, there's a lot of different things on the web and other places that say we want to align our ear, our shoulder, our hip, and our heel, and that could be a great skeletal alignment, but to be honest, most of us don't have that because of how we've lived our life. So when we try to come into that position, we have to be aware of where we're doing it from. And while I think that is a good position kind of to work towards, how we get there is not so easy as just sticking the ribs out or taking your head back. So we're going to play with that today, among other things, with focusing on, for today, the back body, the connection of the sacrum, the space between the shoulder blades and your head. So I'd like you to lie down on your backs to start and have your knees bent so that when you lie down, you notice the parts of you that touch the floor, the parts of you that don't. So the lower back area and the mid back will probably be very similar to what you were against the wall. But because of gravity now, our head has to come down. So that if you were against the wall, your shape was a little bit like this with your head forward, your head's going to have to drop. And the thing to pay attention to with that is when it comes down to the floor, is it coming because your lower ribs are lifting? Is it coming to the floor because you're lifting the chest and getting that length in the spine, which is actually the way I like to work with it sometimes? Or is it coming to the floor by lifting your head back, turning your chin back? This is actually one of the most common ways you see when people lie on the floor and you need to have a blanket under your head. It's not because of so much the neck, but actually because of the rounding in the mid-back. So I'd like you to notice where you're at, and if you find that you do any of those adjustments, to take something under your head so that you're not doing that adjustment in the lower ribs. So by that I mean, go ahead, take your hands behind your head, lift your head a little, give yourself a little traction. Feel the space between the shoulder blades, the sacrum, and then can you bring your head to the floor without making any movement in those? Most likely the answer will be no. And at that moment where you feel you're about to move, that's about as much height as you want under your head. So I'm going to give you a moment to get a blanket or a towel or something to put under your head. And I'm going to use what I've got nearby, which is a block. It's amazing how it's not in the screen, and then it amazingly appears. Sometimes I use a block and the half roller too. So we get into that position, which is better for working towards spinal alignment. So we have a little bit of height, so your sacrum can be on the floor, the lower ribs can drop. You have the curve of your spine. This might be actually it's not too high for me right now. This is how I'm going to be, and we're going to take a little time in this position to breathe. You can let your heels come wider than your toes and just tune into the breath as we begin to focus more on movement. So right now, movement of the breath, nice inhalation. As you exhale, let your jaw soften. And then the next time you inhale, encourage the breath to come into your belly with a sense of expansiveness. As you exhale, let your jaw soften. Let the belly release closer towards the floor. Your next inhalation, bring it a little higher up into the rib cage, because I'm going to be breathing into both places for this practice. So a little bit higher on the inhalation and the exhalation, letting go. Good. All right, and then wiggle your fingers a little bit, circle your wrists a little, take your lower jaw, move it side to side, and then slowly extend your legs out onto the floor. And as you do that, notice if there were any changes in how the lower back, your shoulder blades touch the ground, or if things shift around a little. If there's tightness in the psoas, which most of us have, you will probably notice a little shift. So keep your lift for now. And what I'd like you to do is reach through your heels and then bring your left knee in towards your chest. Keep the reaching through the right heel. And hold on to it for a moment and check. Did the lower back and the space between the shoulder blades, did that change its relationship to the floor? Now what if you draw it a little closer? Do you notice a shift? So that means that as you bring your knee towards the chest, your spine is changing. Even with the height, that might happen. It would probably happen even more without the height. So there's a point where we draw the knee into the chest where it's not anymore about the movement of the thigh and the hip socket. It's actually the movement of the spine in order to get the knee closer. And I want you to find where that edge is, because we're going to play with that. Release that leg. And then go the other leg. Bring the right knee. Just feel when it begins to become more of a flexion of the spine, which means you'll feel your lower back touch the floor. Not a bad thing to do when you're doing it on purpose, but if you always do it, that's a problem. And you may notice this time, try hugging the knee as far as you can. Notice what happens to your head. Right? So generally your neck tends to lift when you really, really round the spine. That's normal. Okay, and then go ahead and release. So I like to play with working towards having a neutral alignment of the spine that really is supportive of the body, and being able to bring the spine into its full range of motion. So we're going to start with working towards those alignment points, and then we're going to do some movements to get more full range of motion in the whole spine. So I'd like you to, we're going to start with the grazing the grass. So go ahead, bend your knees. Feel where your lower back touches the floor, your mid back touches the floor, and we want to keep that stable, so no movement here of the spine right now. We're going to move the spine later, but no move of the spine right now. Take a nice inhalation, and then on your exhalation, now you're probably not going to see this in me, but on your exhalation, draw your hip points towards each other. Encourage your lower belly to go towards the floor. Doing that without moving your back. Again, nice big inhalation into the belly. Exhale. Engaging. So you're beginning to actively engage, squeeze the belly muscles. Now the next time you do that, begin to take a little weight off of your left foot. That's the grazing the grass. I think you're familiar with that. If not, I'll review it. We imagine you're lying on a bed of grass and you begin to lift your left foot so that as if the bones are taking the weight off the grass, but your skin is still touching the grass. And you do not put any extra weight into your right foot or any other place. And that's going to require stabilization from the center. Even that tiny movement requires a lot of engagement in the belly area and also some of the back muscles, but especially the belly. Go ahead, release that. And then do that with the right side. Take the foot off a little bit. And the reason I had you breathe before in two places is usually when we do this, we need to bring the breath up a little higher. Can't breathe in the belly so much because the diaphragm is connected to the abdominal muscles so that there isn't as much freedom of movement when they're really engaged and tight. But we still need to breathe. Go ahead and release. Let's go back to the first side. Nice inhalation. Exhale, take a little weight off of the left foot. And release. And next side, take a little weight off the right foot. And release. So you might ask, why don't I do the toe tapping thing and lift the foot all the way? So I want you to, I know it's a little more workshop-y, but I find it really interesting. So I'm sharing it with you. There's a point where if you were to take your left foot off the floor, that the strength actually no longer comes from the belly, but it actually comes from the hip flexor, which this area that makes the leg move. So you can try it. If you try it on, but we'll try it on both sides. Take your left foot just a little bit off the floor. Don't move anything and feel how much your belly needs to engage. Then begin to lift the foot off a little higher. And you may notice that you don't need to use the belly anymore. It's more the muscles of the legs. And that's why often when people say doing sit-ups, it's not, you can do them where you're not doing a lot of strength in your belly and you're just, for many people actually creating a little more tightness in these hip flexors, this area where for a lot of people it's already tight. So try it on the other side. Go ahead and lift the right foot. Slowly, at first it's the belly, but once you take it up a little higher, it's easy to transfer the activity into the leg. You might still feel it in the belly, but it's much easier to transfer the activity into the hip flexors, which is not what we want to do at first. That's why I do this slow at first. But then you might say, but there are times when I need to move my legs. Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of times we want to move the legs, and that's what we're going to do now. But I want you to be able to keep the stability in the center so that if you're moving from your hip flexors like this, you can be moving your torso. Your torso can move all over the place, as opposed to just keeping the control in your belly. So now, go ahead and extend your legs out onto the floor and grab your strap. We're going to start with some movement in the arms. So reach through your heels, feel the sacrum, space between the shoulder blades, back of your head, and then take the strap between your thumb and forefinger. And then slowly begin to take the strap towards the wall behind you without moving the center of your body. So this movement is about stability for the center of your body and mobility in your upper arms. So just go as far as works for you without shifting in the center of your body. And then inhale, come back up. And do that a few times. Move the strap so it doesn't make lots of noise. Take your arms up towards over. And inhale back up. Keeping everything else stable. And then go ahead and release that. Put the strap off to the side. We won't use it for a little while. And now, same idea with the leg. Can you keep stability in the center? On your exhalation, bring your left knee towards the chest, just to the spot where you're on the edge of rounding your back. So not like this, but just to the edge of where you round your back. Good. And then release. And do the same thing on the right side. And release. And now let's add the arms and legs together. So inhale, arms come away from your feet. Exhale, left knee towards the chest, hands to your shin. Inhale, arms away, legs away. Exhale, right leg. Back and forth at your own pace. Right, and then one more time on each side. Good, and then release. Wiggle your toes, rock your legs in and out, bend your knees. A little tetrasana, but this tetrasana, encourage your spine to keep the same shape. So that means your legs will not go super close, or your knees won't go close to your head. Just a little tetrasana, keeping the same shape of the torso. And then roll on over to your side, grab your two blocks, and come up onto all fours with your knees on your blocks. I want us to recreate that shape of the spine on your hands and knees. So, we'll save these for another time. Put them out of the way. But on your hands and knees, spread your fingers gently and find your lower back, space between the shoulder blades, back of your head. So now we have a very different relationship to gravity. Much more active to find this shape. Being up on the blocks can help find it because where the torso is more parallel to the floor. So from here, slide your shoulders away from your ears. Draw your chin back a little up towards the ceiling. Okay, and then let's play a little with maintaining this and engaging belly strength. So begin to lift your left hand off the floor, kind of the reverse of grazing the grass or reverse position. As you do that, don't shift your weight into your right leg. Keep the weight evenly on the legs. It's quite hard to do. And then release the left hand. Let's do the same thing on the right. Keep the weight evenly on both legs. Can you keep the length in the spine as you do? Often I do this with a head looking down so you can see your hips, but today I want you to maintain the length in the spine, so don't look at your hips. Release that. And then, more challenging, you can either stay just with a hand, or more challenging is to lift a leg and a hand and work towards being stable. Oh, that's actually a lot harder for me with my head lifted than when I lower my head. First finding the balance, and then playing with the stability. Release, and second side. So either doing one arm or doing one leg and one arm. You may notice that one side is easier than the other. It's a great balancing practice. Whoa, and strengthening practice. Good, and then release. Come off the blocks and put them off to the side and come into a puppy pose. Tuck your toes under, extend your left arm, extend your right arm. Before you go back, pay attention to the lumbar curve, thoracic curve, mid-spine, and cervical curve of the neck as you lean back. So when you lean back, get traction, you still have all those curves. They're just not as deep because they're longer. Press down with your palms, reach long. And then child's pose. All right, and then inhale, come on up to sitting. And come to a position where you can sit with as much connection as possible between the sacrum, space between the shoulder blades, back of your head. So for most people that means sitting up on a little bit of height, so that because similar to where we are against the wall, imagine there's space between the shoulder blades and your sacrum. And part of the reason we can do this a little differently is when you're against the wall, the buttocks is in the way to be able to find those two connections. So once you connect the space between the shoulder blades, the sacrum, and the floor, then you begin to notice how your head is involved in that. For most of us, it's a little forward. I tried to wear longer earrings to see that as well, that my head's a little forward. If I was to draw a line through my ear, it's going to come a little forward because I'm still working on that. So to play with that, I'm going to take my chin back a little bit and do the proud peacock. Interlace the fingers, reach your elbows wide, lengthen up. Breathe with a sense of expansiveness. And then release your arms. All right. So let's maintain that length as you come to position with the left ankle in front of your right. And we're going to do just a simple basic cross-legged twist without pushing into the twist, using the muscles in the center of the body. So on your exhalation, begin to spiral to the left. When you finish your exhalation, stop where you are. Inhale, lift and lengthen. And then spiral some more. Right hand comes to the left knee. Left hand of it will come to the back, but you don't use the hands to push. The tendency when we come into a twist is to lean to the side we're twisting. So root down with the right sit bone. One more inhalation. On the exhalation, unwind. And then shift the cross of your legs. Second side, inhale, lift and lengthen. Exhale, spiral. Keeping the weight on the left sit bone as you spiral to the right. One more inhalation there. On the exhalation, unwind. So up till now, we spent a good amount of time focusing on maintaining the alignment, what would be neutral alignment, the alignment we want to move towards as neutral when we come into mountain pose or when we come into seated, whatever, all that position. But of course, we want to be able to move our spines in and out of that resting alignment, that resting neutral. So we're going to play with some more movements. Classic one is moving the pelvis to round the whole spine, and then going the other direction to create a sense of flexion. So on the exhalation, take the sit bones forward and round the back. And let's actually, sorry, we're going to start over. And I want you to take your hands onto your belly so that when you go slow, we're going to start the sit bones come forward. You actually draw the belly a little bit into your back as you take the rounding up a little higher. Those of you with extra curves, be careful not to round too much into your convexity. You need to have a little derotating while you're doing this. When you come to the full roundedness, let your chin release down. You might feel some tension down your back, like nerve tension. And then let's go the other way. Take the sit bones, reach them back, move along your spine, shoulder blades down the back. Begin to lift your head, opening up. All right, and then go back and forth at your own pace. And by at your own pace, I mean your own speed, but also if there's a spot you feel it's a little harder to connect to, take a little more time there. Maybe use your arms. I find for me right above and below the slouch spot, especially actually above the slouch spot, it's a little harder to move. So I'm going to use my hands, reaching them forward to try to help find that. And then go up a few more times back and forth at your pace. So this movement is actually kind of hard to do on the floor because of our head position. And it actually requires on the floor a lot of abdominal strength. So go ahead and just try it, see what I mean on the floor. If I'm going to do this sort of cat and cow tilt thing on the floor, if I start with my pelvis and I roll up the spine, I'm going to need to use my neck muscles, my belly to come up. And then I go the other way. Unless you're right over the edge of the bed, there's really no place for your head to go, though you can lift your chin a little. So you have to make the movements a little bit smaller when you're lying down, moving from the pelvis first to arch up, lifting the head, and then reverse directions. But I find that actually doesn't feel very good for me. Maybe it does for you. If it does, then continue it and continue to practice it. If it doesn't, I don't do that one myself very often unless I'm like lying over some sort of bench where I have more freedom for my head. So that's one way. So this is very good. It correlates to cat and cow tilt. So let's come do that on all fours, on your hands and knees. And include the belly in it. So on the exhalation, draw your sit bones down. Bring the lower belly in towards the back. Begin to round your spine. Press down with the hands. Space between the shoulder blades gets wider. Chin towards the chest. And then go the other way. Reverse directions. Lift the sit bones. Move a little bit of the spine at a time. Slide your shoulders away from your ears as you begin to lift your head. And back and forth at your own pace. And then go ahead and release. Come back to sitting. And now let's play with another way to move the spine, which, for lack of a better term, I learned it from my friend and colleague Galena. It's called the cog. Maybe one day I'll come up with another more playful name. But the cogs are when you are flexing and extending. So flexion is bringing joints together, extending is taking them apart, but you're doing some flexion in one place and extension in another place. So by that I mean you're drawing your sit bones forward, and you, like you did at the beginning of the cat and cow, but when you get to the point where you want to round the spine, feel that and instead begin to lift your head. So you're rounding in the lower body and extending in the upper body. A nice maybe stretch in the neck. And then when you go the other way, you move towards that cow type pose by creating flexion, extension in your lower body. Your upper body comes to flexion by bringing your chin down towards your chest towards your chin. So you get some length and feeling in that upper back. So go back and forth a few times like that. Okay, now this one works much better on the floor. So go ahead and lie down on your back. And hand on the belly, begin to lift the pelvis a little off the floor. Let that ride up the spine. When you feel it comes right around kind of the beginning of the rib cage, you might already begin to feel how it feels good to lift your head, lift and lengthen the chin. And then go the other direction towards creating the lumbar curve, deeper lumbar curve, and bring your chin towards your chest. And back and forth at your own pace. After a while, this might begin to feel like there's a natural rhythm to this. And I'm finding that for some people, this movement feels better and also helping relieve back discomfort. And for some people, the other way works better. And part of it may be just what you're used to. Maybe it's good to switch it up a little bit. then it can also be what's going on with your spine, how you move on your during your regular day. So you're using your belly here. The belly is moving and activating, but it's not staying in one place. All right, go ahead and release that. Exhale. Let your jaw soften. And now come into Tetrasana with an awareness of what you're choosing to do. Are you choosing, or what different movements do? So can Tetrasana, where the spine stays stable, and a Tetrasana where the spine goes into different movements. Not only, well, definitely you can do side-to-side movements, but that flexion, and extension, depending upon where you move your arms and legs. And then go ahead, roll over to your side. Come on to your hands and knees. And either puppy pose or downward facing dog. Tuck the toes under. Whichever position you're choosing, be aware of the curves of your spine. How you move your hands, if you're in puppy or dog pose, how that can affect the movement of the spine. In downward facing dog, the movement of the legs, how that can affect the movement of your spine. Let's play around with that. Find where feels good. You might go to where feels awkward. Don't go to where feels bad. All right, and then move towards straightening your legs. And then child's pose. Inhale up to sitting. And let's come to mountain pose. Come back to where we began. So literally where we began. Go back to the wall or the door and stand with your feet as parallel as possible till your back touches your lower back or upper buttocks. Bring your shoulder blades to touch the wall. Notice where your head goes automatically. Now what can you do here to bring your head a little closer to the wall? What feels most aligned for you? And then come on back. And take a moment to feel into that mountain pose. And if this has been enough information, or you feel that's enough for your spine, this is a good place to end the practice. Or you can play a little bit with some movements that incorporate some of the things we've been doing, especially the spinal alignment. So working towards having your hips over your heels, lower back, space between the shoulder blade, back of your head in line with each other as much as possible. It's hard to see me if I'm looking at you, but I'm trying. Back of the head, space between the shoulder blades, sacrum. And then I want to maintain that connection with a few hip opening movements. So bring your hands onto your hips and just gently hinge forward. As you hinge forward, maintain the curves of your spine. And then come back up. Do that a few times. So the intention is to move just from the hip joints. No rounding here. just from the hip joints. Up and down. So that's one way, like if you're in a forward bend or other forward bending movements, to come up. It requires using the strength here, which is why a lot of times people do it with the knees bent. That helps get some more strength from lower down. But if you're not carrying anything and you've been practicing and you want to strengthen these muscles, coming up and down like this is fine. And you might also explore how far you can go before you do need to round your back. And that's usually an expression of tightness in the legs and some other things going on in your lower back. How long, where do you go where your spine can no longer maintain its curves? Okay, so another thing that is often done, and I do not recommend this if you have a significant or scoliosis that you feel is significant, or if you have osteoporosis. It's not a great thing to do, but if that's not the case, it can feel really good, which is the rounding of the spine. So that would be starting with your chin, drawing it down towards your chest, and then very slowly going vertebra by vertebra to round the spine. When you get down into the belly, draw the navel towards the spine. Let yourself release again. How far you go is also contingent on what's going on in your legs. And then to come back up, start from the spine again and the belly and slowly round up. Again, for some people this is going to help release some tension in the nerves, release some tension in the spine. For other people, if you've got concerns, please skip this and instead do some other thing fun like shimmying or shaking or baking a cake. Much better than doing this if it's not good for your spine. But those of you who are wanting to do this, you can do it one more time. Getting a sense of rolling. And then rolling back up. All right, and then roll your shoulders up and around. Take your feet, this time a little bit wider than hips distance. And we're going to play with maintaining those curves now, coming away from the rounding, maintaining the curves as you come towards hip circles, but I won't want to do a full hip circle. I'm going to do, I'm calling 2/3 of a hip circle. So it means if you go to the left first, shift your hips over to the left, and then take them diagonally back so your torso is hinging forward, and then come around so your torso's going over to the opposite side that you're shifting your weight on, and go back and forth a few times. So while you're doing this, you're maintaining those points of the spine, but you're having a little bit different relationship between the torso and the lower body as you do so. And then bring it into full hip circles. Just feel how the spine changes, especially when you take your pelvis forward. But when you take your pelvis forward, there is some change that happens in the lumbar, in the thoracic, in the cervical spine. There's a little bit of more extension, more towards back bending. When you do that, you're not going to keep those same curves of the spine. And then switch directions. All right, and then come back into mountain pose. Bring your 2 blocks to the front of your mat. It's time for a big asana. Back of the head, space between the shoulder blades, sacrum in line with each other. Take up a lot of space. Feet as parallel as feels comfortable. I know some of you may have some discomfort, some plantar fasciitis, so you can always put a little wedge under here or shift the position of your feet. But right now, focus on the spine. Back of the head, space between the shoulder blades, sacrum. Good. And then bring your hands to your hips and turn your right leg in, turn your left leg out. So as we come into Warrior 2, there's a little twist that happens, but as a twist happens, we want to keep the back of the head, sacrum, space between the shoulder blades in connection with each other. So wherever that helps you, I think I was joking in my live class another day about, like, this is the yogic version of the Macarena. Just feeling the connection. Since we only have 2 arms, we can't touch all 3 spots at the same time. And then come back up and go over to the other side. And one more time on this side. And then let's go back to the first side and hold the posture. Nice inhalation to prepare. Exhale, Virabhadrasana 2, Warrior 2. The tendency is to take the ribs forward and do a bigger back bend here. Now there may be a little bit of that, depending on your hips. The hips are what is really, tightness in the hips is what often leads to that kind of back bend. Or restriction in the hip, maybe that's a better way to say it. Go ahead, look out over your left arm as you breathe. And then come back up, bring your palms together, left leg in, right leg out, arms up, bend the front knee. Come back up, bring your hands to your hips, and hinge forward. Keeping the stability in the center of the body. Bring your hands onto your blocks. Thighs press back, spine lengthens forward. And then walk your hands forward, wide-legged forward fold. And walk your hands back. And your choice to stay here or to let your spine release towards the floor. I'm going to stay here. Breathe. And then to come up, bend your knees slightly. Bring your hands to your hips. Inhale, come up. Walk the feet together. Take one more moment in mountain pose. Arms by your side, cultivating the connection. Back of head, space between the shoulder blades, sacrum. Knowing that we can have the stability and the fluidity. And we call upon them when needed. Sometimes we need one, sometimes the other, most of the time, combination of both. And then go ahead and flow your way down to the floor. Make your way on down. Lie on your back. Take a moment with your knees bent. Exhale. If you feel you want some height under your head, go ahead and get that. Maybe it's changed. How you lie on your back may have changed from the movements that we did. But mostly if you find that your chin is lifting up and that's putting some constriction on the back of the neck, that's when you want something under your head. The ribs are popping up high. Sometimes I put something, sometimes I don't, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to access some of the other movements I want to do. All right, go ahead and find your strap. Extend your legs. Just bring the left knee into the chest. Take the strap around the left foot. And take the leg on up. And here, again, sacrum, space between the shoulder blades, back of your head. Hold the posture. And then begin to bring your leg closer toward your head so that your back actually rounds. And notice what your head does when you do that. Does your leg also bend? Keep the leg as straight as possible and bring it as close as works for your body towards your head. And notice if your position of your head changes. Most likely it will, because you're rounding your spine. When you round your lower spine, it affects the upper spine. Take the leg a little further away so you don't have that roundness anymore. Hold for a moment. And then bend the left knee, release. One more side. Right knee towards your chest. Swing the strap around your right foot, extend the right leg. Hold for a bit. And then bring the leg closer and closer. Feel what that does to the lower back, to your head. And then take it a little further away again so your spine comes back to a neutral. And then bend your right knee. Put the strap off to the side. Exhale. Let's take a gentle twist. Take my arms wherever it feels good. I'm feeling like a cactus today. Lift your knees up, shift them over to the right. Slowly take your knees to the left as your upper body spirals to the right. And inhale, bring your knees back up. Lift your hips, shift them to the left. Take your knees over to the right. Inhale, bring your knees back up. Come to center. Take your arms by your side. Good, extend your legs. Close your eyes. It's time for Shavasana. Watch your breath. Allow your breath to flow. Allow the flow of the breath to guide you to Shavasana, to relaxation. And then, slowly and gently, bring your awareness back to your body, back to your breath. Bring a little movement to your fingers. Bring a little movement to your toes. Reach a little through your arms, reach a little through your legs. And then bend one knee at a time. Roll over to your side. And make your way up to sitting. Okay, so once you're in sitting, find your sit bones. Feel the back of your head, space between the shoulder blades, sacrum. And let's just review a couple of the movements. So the rounding of the spine and the extending of the spine, the back and forth, right? The cat and cow kind of movement is one option. And then the cog movement, where we take the pelvis forward and the chest comes forward, but the chin lifts, and then the sit bones go back. The chest lifts and the chin comes forward. Pick one of those to play with, and when you do them, you can do them big or small. You can do a really big rounding, really big extending, or just a tiny bit. I'm finding that just doing a little bit of the cog movement throughout the day is really nice when I feel some tension going up my spine. All right. So then find your sit bones again, find the length in your spine all the way up through the crown of your head. Bring your palms together, and may you find a balance of fluidity and strength, mobility and stability, and may that support a greater sense of comfort, joy, ease, and freedom. Namaste. So may you continue to play with all the different directions our spine can take us, or we can move it. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.